Seduction starts with choosing someone who is vulnerable to your charm. The best targets are those who are lonely, bored, or emotionally unsettled. These people are easier to seduce because they crave something new or thrilling. Ideally, your victim should stir strong feelings in you, even if they are not the most beautiful or intelligent. This emotional pull makes your efforts more authentic and intense. Look for signs of unconscious attraction, blushing, mirroring your movements, or reacting with unexplainable shyness or irritation. These reactions reveal a deeper susceptibility. The perfect victim may even intimidate you slightly or possess something you lack, which creates a tension charged with erotic energy. Resistance from the victim isn't a dead end. It fuels your creativity and deepens their sense of power, drawing them in. Repressed, restless, or adventure-starved individuals make especially ideal targets, as seduction offers them the release or excitement they're missing. In the 19th century novel Woman and Puppet, we see that a young girl named Conchita Perez chose Don Mateo Diaz as her right victim. Don Mateo was a 38-year-old man, and he was wealthy, established, but emotionally unfulfilled. Beneath the surface, he craved excitement, youth, and something to break the boredom of his life. That craving made him vulnerable, and Conchita saw it immediately. She approached him on the street with a simple offer to sing him a song in exchange for money. The moment was innocent on the surface, but the song she chose was suggestive, just enough to plant a seed of desire. Don Mateo then walked her home and learned she was a virgin, and his desire intensified. He visited her the next day, and though she sat on his lap and kissed him first, she pulled away and blamed him for going too far. Don Mateo was left confused, guilty, and emotionally hooked. From that moment forward, Conchita expertly manipulated his emotions. She let him grow comfortable, even undress in front of him, only to push him away when he tried to act on his feelings. Don Mateo even offered to buy her a home of her own, but she accused him of trying to buy her love and left without a trace. Her absence created a fantasy that convinced him she was the love of his life, and the longer she stayed away, the more obsessed he became. Months passed without a word, until one day, Don Mateo heard a familiar voice call out his name on the street. It was Conchita, and she seemed excited to see him again. She explained that she had run from him not because she didn't care, but because she was afraid of her own feelings and what they meant. But now, she was ready. She said she loved him and wanted to be his, even marry him. Overwhelmed with joy, Don Mateo took her home. They began kissing and undressing, and for a moment, it seemed he would finally have her. But then he discovered a piece of clothing, like a chastity belt that he couldn't remove. Conchita told him it was how she protected her virginity. Even if they married, she still wanted to remain untouched. Heartbroken and frustrated, Don Mateo cried and sent her away. Soon after, he began seeing her flirt openly with other men. Watching her laugh and joke with them while keeping him at a distance drove Don Mateo crazy. The idea that someone else might have what he was being denied made him burn with jealousy. Then one night, Conchita invited him to sleep beside her. When he arrived, she greeted him, completely naked, claiming it was too hot to wear anything. The temptation became unbearable. Don Mateo finally snapped and gave her an ultimatum: either give him what he wanted or never see him again. Conchita began to cry. She confessed that she wanted him too, but felt insecure and unsure of herself. She said she would finally give herself to him if he bought her a house. Blinded by emotion and desperation, Don Mateo agreed. The next morning, he arrived at her new home, full of anticipation, but when she appeared at the door, she was cold and distant. Through the bars, she ordered him to kiss her hand, her foot, and then her skirt. Humiliated but obedient, he did as she asked. When he finished, she told him she no longer needed him. She had gotten what she wanted, a home, and now he meant nothing to her. Then, right in front of him, another man appeared, and they began to have sex while Don Mateo stood there, stunned and shattered. The next day, Conchita showed up at his home, still burning with rage. Don Mateo slapped her so hard she fell to the ground. He nearly forced himself on her, but stopped when she broke down in tears. In between sobs, Conchita revealed that the scene he had witnessed the day before was all an act. The man, the sex, it had only been a performance meant to provoke him. She was still a virgin, and now that she could see his pain, she felt certain he truly loved her. That night, Conchita finally gave herself to him, and Don Mateo was the one who took her virginity. From Conchita's story, we learn 4 powerful lessons in seduction. First, choose the right victim. Conchita didn't seduce just anyone. She chose Don Mateo, a man who lacked excitement in his life, who was emotionally vulnerable and susceptible to fantasy. He craved something new, something youthful, and something that would make him feel alive again. That's what made him the perfect victim. Seduction is a game of psychology, and it begins with selecting someone whose emotional needs you can exploit. Conchita saw his hunger and fed it carefully. Second, mix pleasure with pain. One of the greatest mistakes in seduction is being too nice. At first, kindness is charming, but if it becomes predictable, it grows dull. Conchita never made that mistake. She gave Don Mateo affection, then pulled it away. She kissed him, then shamed him. She disappeared, then returned. Each emotional high was made more intense by the low that preceded it. When Don Mateo tried to, quote, buy her love, she accused him of trying to own her, wounding his pride. When she came back, she gave him just enough to revive his hope, only to crush him again with jealousy and humiliation. Every act of pleasure was laced with pain, and every cruelty was eventually soothed by a moment of sweetness. She stimulated guilt, longing, desire, confusion, jealousy, rage, and finally ecstasy. The more she destabilized him, the more deeply he fell under her spell. As the Art of Seduction says, the lower the lows you create, the greater the highs, and those highs become addictive. Third, give your victim space to fall. After Don Mateo offered to buy her a home the first time, Conchita vanished. She made him believe he had pushed her too far. In reality, she was creating space. Space in which his imagination could take over. Space where fantasy and obsession could bloom. Her silence made him think he had lost her, that he had done something wrong. He mourned her as if she were already his, and now gone. By pulling away, she created a vacuum that he rushed to fill. This is one of the most subtle yet powerful strategies in seduction. If you're always present and always pursuing, your victim becomes passive. They grow used to your attention, and the tension fades. But when you retreat, especially after showing interest, you trigger a panic. They wonder, did I mess up? Is it over? And suddenly, they begin to chase you. Conchita used this perfectly. After stirring Don Mateo's emotions, she withdrew, vanishing just long enough to leave him alone with his obsession. Fourth, appear to be an object of desire. We want what others want. No one is attracted to the person whom others avoid or neglect. When Conchita began flirting with other men in public in front of Don Mateo, this was a calculated move to raise her value. She surrounded herself with admirers, real or perceived, creating the illusion that she was constantly being courted. This triggered Don Mateo's jealousy and made him feel like he had to prove himself to win her before someone else did. The more he saw others desiring her, the more desirable she became to him. Desirability is all about perception. When someone seems wanted by others, we can't help but see them as more valuable. That's why love triangles work so well. Conchita allowed other men to come between her and Don Mateo, and it made him see her as someone he had to chase, someone he might lose if he didn't act fast. This only deepened his obsession. The result? He wasn't just seduced, he was conquered. He believed he was chasing her, but in reality, he had been led step by step into her trap. Conchita's seductive power lies in her identity as a coquette, one of the 9 archetypal seducers described in the Art of Seduction. The coquette is a master of contradiction, unpredictability, and most importantly, delay. Their greatest weapon is withholding satisfaction. By giving pleasure only to pull it away, the coquette keeps their victims suspended between hope and insecurity, longing for a moment that never fully arrives. That is precisely what Conchita does to Don Mateo. She intensifies his desire with kisses, intimate gestures, and even emotional declarations. But just as quickly, she withdraws. She kisses him, then teases him. She offers him love, then disappears. She invites him to bed, only to insist that she'll remain a virgin, even in marriage. She lets him believe he's about to win her, then humiliates him through distance and denial. And yet, he never walks away. The more she denies him, the more obsessed he becomes. People are inherently perverse. What is easily won is easily discarded. We are most attracted to what we can't have, and Conchita understands this. She never gives herself fully to Don Mateo because she knows that satisfaction kills seduction. The moment he feels he has her, his desire might fade, so she keeps him wanting, delaying the climax, creating just enough insecurity to stir panic, then reappearing with just enough warmth to reignite hope. Most people fear pulling away, afraid it might cause someone to lose interest, but the coquette thrives on distance. That emotional vacuum creates anxiety, which fuels longing. Don Mateo doesn't chase Conchita in spite of her coldness. He chases her because of it. Her independence, her aloofness, and her unpredictability make him desperate to be the one who finally breaks through her armor. But that never happens. Instead, he becomes her slave, constantly trying to prove himself, constantly hoping that this time she'll stay. Conchita sends contradictory signals, one moment warm and affectionate, the next indifferent or cruel. This plunges Don Mateo into emotional confusion. He wonders if she ever truly wanted him, if he did something wrong, and if she's found someone else. In that mental chaos, he clings to her more tightly, not less. This is the core power of the coquette. They don't seduce through overt charm or relentless pursuit. They seduce by pulling back, by seeming like they don't need anyone at all. That very self-sufficiency becomes irresistible, and just when you think you've figured them out, they change again. Meanwhile, Don Mateo is a textbook drama queen, one of the 18 victim types. Drama queens live for emotional turbulence. They crave intensity, not peace. Stability bores them. They don't just tolerate pain and confusion. They feed off it. Don Mateo constantly plays the victim, lamenting his confusion, his longing, his humiliation, yet returning again and again for more. He doesn't want comfort. He wants emotional warfare dressed as romance. With drama queens, seduction only works when laced with chaos. The moment you become too nice, too stable, or too available, they lose interest. Conchita gives Don Mateo just the kind of mental rough treatment he secretly craves. Her rejections, her absences, and her humiliations torment him, but they also make him feel alive. He can't let go because the drama has become his drug. Together, the Coquette and the drama queen form a dangerously perfect pair. She withholds what he desperately wants, while he chases what he knows will hurt him. The more he suffers, the more he's drawn to her, and the more he chases, the more power she gains. Each becomes the perfect mirror for the other's desire and dysfunction. But there are a few warnings embedded in this dynamic. First, timing. If the Coquette makes the victim wait too long, they may detach. Second, the balance of pleasure and pain. If suffering outweighs pleasure for too long, the spell can break. Yet, in Conchita's case, she mastered both. Her timing was flawless, and her cruelty never went so far that Don Mateo gave up. She always returned just before the threat snapped, dangling relief just close enough to keep him hooked, until he was so entangled in her emotional web that even her cruelty felt like affection. In the end, Woman and Puppet is more than a story of seduction. It's a blueprint for how a masterful coquette can take complete control over a drama queen, turning delayed pleasure, emotional contradiction, and absence into tools of domination. Through Conchita and Don Mateo, we don't just watch a romance unfold, we watch an entire psychology unravel. Although Don Mateo exhausted himself trying to prove his love to Conchita, his efforts failed, not because proving yourself doesn't work, but because he lacked control of the dynamic. He was chasing someone who had already taken the upper hand. His gestures were desperate, reactive, and driven by obsession, not calculated, strategic, or well-timed. His efforts lacked mystery and dignity, and therefore failed to inspire. But in the right context, proving yourself can be one of the most powerful tools in seduction. Most people want to be seduced, but they also want to feel secure. If someone resists your advances, it may not be a hard no. Often, they're uncertain about your motives or the depth of your feelings. One bold, visible gesture, especially one that shows you're willing to make a real sacrifice for them, can silence their doubts and move them emotionally. One of the most striking examples of this comes from the story of Pauline Bonaparte, Napoleon's sister. Known for her beauty and her string of fleeting affairs, Pauline rarely stayed interested in one man for long, but that changed when she met Jules de Canouville. At first, no one thought the affair would last more than a few weeks, but then something happened that set Canouville apart from all the others. Pauline had a bad tooth, and when the dentist arrived, she became terrified at the sight of the sharp metal tools and refused to go through with it. No painkillers were used at the time, so even though the tooth was keeping her up at night, she backed out at the last second. Canouville, watching nearby, tried to reassure her, telling her that a moment or two of pain and it's over forever. But Pauline, dramatic, emotional, and stubborn, classic signs of a seduction slipping away, challenged him. "I'd like to see you do it." Instead of trying to reason with her or scold her, Canouville did something unforgettable. He sat down in the dentist chair himself, and to show Pauline that the pain would only last a moment, he had the dentist pull out one of his own perfectly good teeth. The pain was real, the blood was real, and the sacrifice was undeniable. Pauline, moved and stunned, finally let the dentist treat her. But more importantly, she never looked at Canouville the same way again. His willingness to endure pain for her shook her emotionally. He had proved himself, not through words, but through action. What followed was not the usual brief affair. Napoleon, disapproving of their relationship, sent Canouville away, first to Spain, then to Germany. Each time, he returned to Pauline. Finally, he was sent to Russia, where he died in battle. But even then, Pauline waited for him. He became the only lover she ever waited for. That is the power of proving yourself. A single visible act of sacrifice can cut through resistance, melt cynicism, and create a bond stronger than charm or flattery ever could. When done at the right moment, with authenticity and risk, it speaks louder than any declaration of love. To understand why Pauline Bonaparte, one of the most desired women of her time, was so deeply affected by Jules de Canouville, we have to look beyond the surface of their romance. Pauline wasn't a political leader herself, but she was the sister of Napoleon Bonaparte, the most powerful man in Europe. That alone made her a magnet for suitors with hidden agendas, men who didn't just want her, but the access, status, and influence that came with being close to Napoleon. Over time, this reality shaped her perception of others. She learned to distrust flattery, to question affection, and to believe that most people's love came with strings attached. It's for this reason that, despite her beauty and social standing, Pauline can be understood as a lonely leader, one of the 18 seductive victim types described in The Art of Seduction. What makes the lonely leader so difficult to seduce isn't arrogance or self-importance, it's isolation. Constantly surrounded by opportunists and insincere admirers, they become emotionally guarded. Even if they long for intimacy, their lives don't allow much room for it. The attention they receive rarely feels sincere. They are admired by everyone but truly seen by no one. This is what made Jules de Canouville's act of devotion so powerful. When Pauline was paralyzed by fear during a dental procedure, Canouville didn't just soothe her with sweet words. He stunned her with sacrifice. He sat in the dentist's chair himself and had a perfectly healthy tooth pulled from his own mouth, just to show her she could endure it. That single gesture pierced through her emotional armor. It wasn't theatrical, it was honest, painful, and unmistakably real. For someone in Pauline's position, that kind of raw vulnerability was rare. Canouville didn't try to flatter her ego or appeal to her status. He didn't tiptoe around her privilege. He made himself bleed for her, and in doing so, proved that his love was deeper than politics or performance. After that moment, their affair didn't fade the way her others had. Even when Napoleon tried to separate them, sending Canouville across Europe, from Spain to Germany and finally to Russia, he always found a way back to Pauline, at least until fate made sure he couldn't. He was the only lover Pauline ever waited for. That's the unique power dynamic of seducing a lonely leader. Once you break through, they cling to the emotional truth you've given them. You become their escape from a world that never feels real. In the end, Canouville's seduction succeeded because it refused to be just another courtship. He reached the part of Pauline no one else could. The woman tired of being wanted for the wrong reasons. The woman wondering if anyone could ever see her as more than a pathway to power. Based on the information we have about Jules de Canouville, it's hard to say with certainty what kind of seducer he was, but it's likely he embodied a blend of types. Most notably, he seems to have been a charmer, an ideal lover, and carried a hint of the rake. As a charmer, Canouville had the grace and emotional intelligence to handle Pauline's moods without force or pressure. When she panicked at the dentist his chair. He didn't scold her or dismiss her fear. Instead, he responded with calm reassurance and tenderness. That's the essence of the charmer, someone who seduces not through dominance, but by making others feel safe, important, and understood. Charmers don't draw attention to themselves. Instead, they focus entirely on you. Their interest feels genuine and intense, making people naturally open up and let their guard down. They're easy to be around, pleasant, warm, and rarely critical or confrontational. This calm, validating energy becomes addictive, and before long, people feel dependent on them without even realizing it. While beauty may fade, the charmer's power lies in something deeper, their ability to make others feel special, seen, and at ease, again and again. At the same time, his actions carried the flair and fantasy of the ideal lover. Pulling out a perfectly healthy tooth just to ease Pauline's fear wasn't just helpful, it was symbolic. It said, without words, you are worth pain, you are worth sacrifice. That kind of theatrical, emotional gesture taps into the ideal lover's unique power, offering the dream of deep, romantic devotion, the kind of love people secretly crave but rarely encounter. Ideal lovers know that most people carry old dreams, crushed over time by dull relationships and daily disappointments. They step into this emotional gap by embodying a fantasy, showing up as the person the other once hoped to find. Their seduction lies in reflecting what their target longs for, whether it's tenderness, drama, escape, or meaning. In a world full of disillusionment, ideal lovers stand out because they make love feel magical again. Canoville didn't just ease Pauline's fears, he made her feel like she was living a story, one where someone would do anything for her, and for someone constantly surrounded by empty flattery, that made all the difference. But perhaps the most powerful part of Jules de Canoville's seduction came from the Rake within him. While he may have had the grace of a charmer and the romantic fantasy of an ideal lover, it was his unrestrained desire, his obsession with Pauline, that made him unforgettable. The Rake doesn't play it cool, he doesn't hold back. He dives in head first, making his target feel like the only woman in the world. And for Pauline, a woman constantly surrounded by shallow suitors and political opportunists, that kind of raw, obsessive attention was intoxicating. A Rake may be selfish, even reckless, but that recklessness is exactly what makes him so hard to resist. He's not just chasing a woman, he's surrendering to her. When Canoville ripped out a healthy tooth just to ease Pauline's fear, it was more than devotion, it was madness. But that madness is exactly what defines the Rake. He'll suffer, sacrifice, and defy all logic for a woman, at least for a moment. Women are not drawn to the Rake because he's safe. They're drawn to him because he's dangerous, emotionally volatile, and unpredictable. His desire feels out of control, and that gives it authenticity. Unlike the careful, calculating man who plays it safe, the Rake throws himself at your feet, and in doing so, flips the power dynamic. He may be seen as the player, but he plays the fool for love, and that kind of vulnerability is deeply seductive. The Rake, while uniquely a male archetype, has a female counterpart, the Siren. She channels the same wild, obsessive energy, but crafted to captivate men. Where the Rake fulfills the ultimate female fantasy, the Siren offers men their own. Total escape from control, responsibility, and restraint. In her presence, a man forgets logic. He's no longer the responsible reliable provider or the man in control. He becomes a creature of instinct and desire. Her world is heightened, vivid, and otherworldly. Her voice is slow and soothing. Her presence theatrical, designed to dissolve reason and stir pure instinct. Few women have mastered the art of seduction like Cleopatra. When she first met Julius Caesar, she didn't simply walk into the room. She was unrolled from a carpet, half-clothed, poised, and mesmerizing. Cleopatra understood that seduction wasn't about beauty alone. It was about illusion. She turned herself into a living goddess, dressing as Isis and surrounding herself with a haze of incense, gold, and spectacle. Her real power came from her unpredictability. One moment warm, the next aloof, keeping even the most powerful men constantly on edge, craving her approval. In her presence, Caesar didn't feel like a ruler. He felt like a man caught in something far larger than himself. That's the essence of the Siren, not to reflect reality, but to pull you into a dream you never want to wake from. Cleopatra was also a master of sending mixed signals. With every change in mood and shift in tone, she created mystery and tension. Was she angry, amused, testing them? They never quite knew, and that confusion kept them obsessed. This is the seductive strategy outlined in Send Mixed Signals. Once someone is aware of you, once you've caught their attention, the goal isn't to make yourself clearer or more obvious. It's to become more intriguing, and nothing is more intriguing than contradiction. Most people reveal too much too soon. They're too consistent, too one-dimensional. But when someone is both bold and shy, spiritual and sensual, innocent and cunning, they seem layered, deep. That kind of complexity stirs our imagination. It makes us wonder, who is this person really? What are they hiding? Cleopatra's sudden coldness wasn't just moodiness. It was a calculated move to keep Caesar or Antony guessing, and it worked. When someone sends mixed signals, they take control of the dynamic. They become the one who is pursued. To use this technique yourself, start by hinting at contradictory traits early on. If people think you're sweet, surprise them with sharpness. If you seem composed, show flashes of wildness. It doesn't need to be extreme. It just needs to be unexpected. That contrast creates fascination, but use this power carefully. Not everyone is drawn to ambiguity. Some people want clarity, simplicity, and emotional security. Take Pauline Bonaparte, for example. As a lonely leader, she didn't want mystery. She wanted certainty. She was surrounded by opportunists and flatterers, and what she longed for was someone who could prove themselves to her, as Jules de Cannoville did. Had he played games or sent mixed signals like Conchita did with Don Mateo, he would have failed. That's why it's crucial to understand the person you're dealing with. Seduction isn't one size fits all. A strategy that works on one type, like mystery for those drawn to fantasy, can backfire with someone who simply wants to feel safe, seen, and valued. Mixed signals pull some people in, but for others, they push them away. The key is knowing which is which. The Siren doesn't always come wrapped in gold and smoke. Sometimes, she whispers instead of roars. Marilyn Monroe used a different but equally powerful form of seduction. Instead of spectacle, she relied on softness. Her breathy voice, her gentle manner, and the vulnerability she exuded. She gave the impression of someone who lived for pleasure, but was also deeply in need of love. This mix of overt sensuality and innocent charm disarmed men. She seemed unaware of her own effect, which only made her more alluring. Men didn't just desire her, they wanted to protect her, to be the one who finally gave her the affection she seemed to crave. What Cleopatra and Monroe shared was a deep understanding of male psychology. Both created an illusion so compelling that men willingly gave up control. Whether Whether it was through goddess-like drama or vulnerable sensuality, they offered not just beauty, but a full emotional escape. And in that escape, men forgot logic, responsibility, and even themselves. A true siren masters contrast. Part seductress, part innocent. One part screams sex, the other whispers vulnerability. This balance creates a unique illusion that she's deeply sensual yet still in need of protection. It's intoxicating. The man feels powerful in her presence, but also powerless to resist her. She makes him feel like a god, while she herself appears just out of reach. What makes the siren so powerful is that she controls the chase. Her scent lingers, her movements are slow and deliberate, and she always keeps a hint of mystery, a flicker of a smile, a sudden mood shift, a casual dismissal. These keep the man guessing, off balance, and desperate to win her back. In contrast to the eager women who throw themselves at men, the siren cultivates distance. That distance makes her appear elevated and untouchable, and because she never gives too much away, she leaves room for the man's imagination, and it's a man's imagination that truly binds him to a woman. But the siren isn't without danger. She stirs envy in other women, and her allure can fade with time if she relies only on appearance. Yet, the most skilled sirens, like Cleopatra, understood that drama, mystery, and control over male psychology could keep their spell alive long after youth had faded. Together, the Rake and the Siren represent seduction in its purest form, not kindness, not comfort, not logic, but fantasy, intensity, and surrender. And yet, as powerful as these strategies are, they are not universal. Seduction is not a formula, it's a response to the person in front of you. The art lies in choosing the right energy for the right target. That's why Jules de Cannoville's approach worked so well. He didn't rely on ambiguity, or drama, or distance. Pauline Bonaparte didn't need to be dazzled. She needed to be seen. For a woman constantly surrounded by flatterers and performers, what she craved wasn't fantasy, it was proof. In the end, Cannoville succeeded where other men failed, not because he was smoother or flashier, but because he gave Pauline something she didn't even know she needed, an experience of sincerity in a world of insincerity. He passed through her defenses, offered proof, and tapped into the loneliness she carried as someone constantly admired, but rarely understood. He didn't go after the powerful woman everyone saw. He connected with the real person underneath, and that's what made it work. Sometimes, despite all the flirting, tension, and signals, things still stall. A moment arrives when your target clearly desires you but isn't ready to admit it openly or take the lead. This is the time to throw aside chivalry, kindness, and hesitation. No more waiting, and no more playing it safe. It's time to overwhelm with a bold move. Most people hesitate here. They second-guess themselves, worry about rejection, and overthink the consequences. But hesitation kills desire. Boldness, on the other hand, fuels it. Don't give your target time to consider the consequences. Create conflict, stir up tension, and make your move a powerful release. Showing hesitation or awkwardness signals that you're thinking of yourself, not overwhelmed by your target's charms. Seduction isn't political. You must go on the offensive. Timing is everything. If you wait too long, the moment loses its magic. Tension turns to awkwardness, and passion fades into regret. But jump in too soon, before there's real chemistry, and it can feel forced or needy. Watch for the signs. A prolonged look, mirrored body language, nervous laughter, little pauses that betray interest. When you see these, act like their charms were too powerful to longer resist. Make it feel like they broke your control. The bold move is more than just a kiss or touch. It's a statement. You got to me. I couldn't help myself. That vulnerability is deeply flattering. But here's the paradox. While the move must feel impulsive, the build-up requires patience. Rush it, and it looks like lust. Wait just long enough, and it feels earned, making it unforgettable. Don't be just another person chasing a hookup. Be the one whose desire feels genuine, magnetic, and rare. A key part of the bold move is surprise. If you sense your target expects it, don't strike. Pull back instead. Let them relax, second-guess themselves, and wonder if they misread you. This subtle back and forth, showing interest, then stepping away, is a form of mixed signals. It builds tension and deepens intrigue. When their guard finally drops, that's when you strike, landing the bold move with the greatest impact. Seduction is emotional theater. At the moment of the bold move, your target's resistance is low. You want to infect them with your own emotional mood before words even enter the scene. When you do this well, you access their unconscious mind, bypassing their conscious defenses and heightening the drama of the moment. One important caution: impatience can ruin it all. If you seem only focused on sex, it signals that you care more about your own desire than your target's charms. A longer courtship feeds vanity and makes the eventual bold move more powerful and lasting. But wait too long, showing desire but then shying away, and you'll cause insecurity, awkwardness, and misunderstanding. This awkwardness is deeply anti-seductive. It belongs to the bumbler, someone who seems clumsy or unsure, but is really selfish and caught up in their own fears and self-consciousness. The bumbler's lack of timing and hesitation kills desire, because seduction requires boldness and control. The target never gets swept away when the pursuer is lost in their own uncertainty. On the flip side, impatience is just as damaging, and it belongs to the brute. Brutes have no patience for love, no appreciation for the build-up or anticipation. They focus only on their own pleasure, ignoring the other person's feelings and timing. Patience shows thoughtfulness and respect, and that never fails to impress. Make them wait and watch closely. Their reaction shows who they are and how strong your hold on them really is. Mastering the bold move means balancing these extremes. You can't be timid or rash. You must be bold but patient. You must be attentive to the signals and emotions that tell you when to strike. Understanding this balance leads us to the next topic: the anti-seducer. Those who sabotage attraction by falling into the traps of awkwardness, impatience, or self-centeredness. Learning to avoid becoming an anti-seducer is key to mastering the art of seduction. Awkwardness and impatience aren't just unattractive, they're anti-seductive. The one who hesitates at the crucial moment becomes the bumbler, not charmingly shy, but self-absorbed. The brute, on the other hand, rushes everything, too impatient to savor the build-up. Both repel desire for the same reason. They think of themselves instead of the other person. These two types are part of a broader category, the anti-seducers, and the truth is, we all have traces of them within us. Seducers draw you in with presence, charm, and attention. Anti-seducers do the opposite. They repel through neediness, self-absorption, or control. They talk too much, miss cues, lack timing, and assume you're already theirs, killing the mystery, the desire, and the chase. And when the mystery dies, so does the seduction. If you want to seduce, you must first root out the anti-seducer within you. Recognize these types, not in others, but in yourself. The brute. Impatient, focused only on their own gratification. They can't wait, can't tease, can't savor the chase. The bumbler, awkward and unsure, they hesitate, overthink, and smother attraction with self-consciousness. The suffocator falls in love before you've even said hello. Their affection isn't earned, it's a desperate attempt to fill an inner void. The moralizer, always judging, always correcting. They want to improve you, not entice you. Seduction is a dance, not a sermon. The tightwad, stingy not just with money, but with attention, emotion, and effort. Desire starves where generosity dies. The windbag talks endlessly, usually about themselves. They mistake noise for charm, and forget that listening is the true act of seduction. The reactor can't take a joke, can't take criticism. Around them, you're walking on eggshells. Nothing kills attraction faster. The vulgarian, crude, careless, and unaware. They cross boundaries and kill mystery with their lack of refinement. These types repel instead of attract, and the first step toward mastery is seeing where they live in you. The common thread across all anti-seducers: they don't read the other person. They don't adapt, don't intuit, and don't charm. They're stuck in their own heads or egos. Seduction is about paying attention, focused, subtle, attuned attention. Anti-seducers have none, and that's what makes them so toxic to desire. Even worse than awkwardness or impatience is the assumption that you already have someone. Nothing is more anti-seductive than entitlement. The idea that the other person is already yours and no longer needs to be seduced. Seduction dies in certainty. It thrives in pursuit, in unpredictability, and in emotional tension. If you want to seduce, never try to dominate or persuade directly. Don't lecture, don't moralize, and don't impose. All of that is anti-seductive. Instead, study yourself. Spot your own anti-seductive tendencies, and get rid of them. You'll not only become more desirable, but more attuned, more elegant, and more powerful in every interaction. With that said, being anti-seductive isn't always a bad thing. In fact, it can be one of the most effective ways to end a relationship. When a seduction has run its course, or when continuing would do more harm than good, you don't always need to say, "It's over." Sometimes, you just need to stop being seductive. Let the charm fade, the mystery dissolve, and let the spell break on its own. You start to pull back a little. You stop giving compliments. Stop putting in the effort. The spark fades on purpose. The silences get longer. The conversations feel awkward. And the touches stop meaning what they used to. It's not an accident. It's the quiet way people leave before they're gone. And if distance alone doesn't work, you can do the opposite. Smother them. Become a little too available. Be overly eager. Overly emotional. Get jealous over nothing. Cling instead of entice. Nothing kills attraction faster than neediness, because it destroys the tension that seduction feeds on. These small changes say everything, and usually, they're enough to make the other person walk away. It may seem cruel, but it's cleaner than a drawn-out goodbye. If you drag it out, both sides suffer. The more confused or insecure your former target feels, the more they'll cling, hoping to revive what's already dead. But if you let the anti-seduction take hold, awkwardness, boredom, criticism, they'll come to the realization themselves, and that makes parting easier. So sometimes, yes, the anti-seducer is your exit strategy, but there's another, more honest way to end a relationship. You simply end it. No slow fade, no more games or mixed signals, just clarity. If the spell is broken, if you're no longer enchanted, and no, you won't be again, then the kindest thing you can do is to be decisive. Make the break clean and quick. Don't apologize for moving on. That only blurs the message and invites more pain. Respect the other person enough to give them truth, not pity. Dragging things out only fuels false hope. Worse, in trying to break things off gently, you might accidentally reignite their obsession. The attempt to cushion the fall becomes a new seduction, one they desperately cling to, and now you're stuck in something you were trying to escape. So if you're sure it's over, be clear and be firm, because in the end, ambiguity hurts more than honesty. But if a direct approach feels too harsh, or if you think it will provoke drama, then yes, go back to the anti-seduction. Let the relationship unravel through boredom, tension, or emotional withdrawal. Either way, the goal is the same, to end the fantasy cleanly, because what comes next is just as important as the seduction itself. Beware the after effects. Seduction is a spell, a kind of illusion. During it, you are not quite your normal self. You heighten your charm, conceal your flaws, and perform a carefully crafted role. You're mysterious, attentive, and magnetic. You create an escape from the ordinary world, a world of work, stress, and responsibility. But like all spells, it can't last forever. Once the seduction reaches its climax, something shifts. The tension that kept things exciting is gone. The mystery begins to fade. The game becomes real, and with that reality often comes disillusionment. For your target, this can feel like a crash. What once felt magical now feels ordinary. The person who once swept them off their feet starts to feel familiar, human. The fantasy slips, and they may begin to question everything. Were you just putting on a show? Were you ever really into them? Was it all a game? And on your end, something similar can happen. You may begin to feel bored, restless, and even disappointed. Why? Because they've surrendered, and that surrender can kill desire. This is the after effect, the natural emotional come down that follows a powerful seduction. After the seduction, the real challenge begins, keeping the spell alive or ending it with grace. Don't get lazy. One of the quickest ways to ruin everything is by making your partner feel like you've stopped trying. After the seduction, there's a temptation to get comfortable, to relax, let your effort fade, and enjoy the reward. But to the other person, this sudden drop in attention feels like a betrayal. They think, so that's it? You only cared when you were trying to get something? If it suddenly feels like you've stopped trying, they'll feel used. So keep the tension alive, continue flirting, and keep surprising them. Seduction dies in routine. Keep some mystery. Too much familiarity kills desire. Don't reveal everything about yourself. Keep parts of yourself hidden. Let them guess. Let them wonder. Absence helps too, so pull back every now and then. Not to be distant, but to stay desirable. If they feel like they have you completely, they'll stop chasing. And without the chase, there's no seduction. Give them space to fall for you again. Stay playful. Once things get serious, people often get emotional, demanding, and petty. They start nagging, complaining, and trying to control. But seduction thrives on play, not pressure. If you want to keep someone under your spell, be fun and unpredictable. Tease instead of criticize. Laugh off what annoys you instead of lecturing. Maintain a light spirit, and they'll stay engaged. Try to control them, and they'll pull away. Never try to fix them. That turns you into a moralizer, one of the classic anti-seducers. Don't drag it out. Sometimes, the enchantment is simply gone, and instead of ending it, one person just checks out. They stop talking and grow cold, and the other, sensing the withdrawal, tries to reignite the flame. A vicious cycle begins. pursuit and retreat, pain and confusion, hope and disappointment. Don't do this. But not every ending can be clean. Sometimes they won't let go. Sometimes you know that honesty will only pull them in deeper, make them plead or cling. In those cases, directness backfires, and that's when the anti-seducer becomes useful. Let your lack of effort speak. Let the spark die naturally. Distance, dullness, and inattention can quietly drain the desire until the other person lets go on their own. It's not cruelty, it's a softer kind of release. But whatever you do, don't fake it, and don't stay out of pity. Because at the end of the day, seduction isn't just about attraction. It's about creating a moment, a memory, and a spell that lingers long after the seduction is over. And if you mishandle the aftermath, you ruin not just the future, but the past. You turn what once felt special into something sour. The post-seduction phase is an art of its own. Treat it with the same care you gave the first move, because that's what makes a true seducer. Not just how you enter, but how you exit. As always, thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below, and if you like this video, please leave a like and subscribe. Until next time.